Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now a year ago on the 22nd of February it was since Tyson Fury stopped Deontay Wilder, and Tyson Fury has not allowed that anniversary to go unmentioned. This is what he had to say on his Instagram page. 1 year ago today I did exactly what I said I would do to the big dosser Deontay Wilder. So obviously Tyson Fury has not allowed this to go unmissed, and he wants to let everyone know that he done exactly what he said, and in all honesty, he actually did. He said he was going to step to Deontay Wilder and stop him. He was going to put him on the back foot. He was going to come in north of 19 stone and be the bigger man and the puncher in there and push Deontay Wilder back. And he done exactly that. Perhaps Deontay Wilder did not expect it, although he did bulk up a bit himself. He was heavier than his usual weight, so perhaps he did expect Tyson Fury to do it, or maybe he was caught between styles and did not know what Tyson Fury to expect, because the thing is with Tyson Fury is he can adjust. We've seen that now. He can go on the back foot, he can fight on the inside, he can go forwards and push his man back. Those are things that Deontay Wilder cannot do. He cannot adjust in fights. He has the right hand and he almost plays possum until that right hand lands. In many fights we've seen him get outboxed by the likes of even Gerald Washington, but he still gets the knockout. That punch will land at some point. It always does. So what Tyson Fury done is, instead of wait for that punch to land, which it did in the first fight with Deontay Wilder, he was dropped twice, but instead of waiting for that to happen, what Tyson Fury done was stopped him before it got to that point. And I mean, given where Deontay Wilder was in that 7th round, he wasn't getting a knockout punch against Tyson Fury because there was nothing left. Put it this way, disgruntled ex-trainer of Deontay Wilder, Mark Breland, because there has been a lot of back and forth between the two of them, but he explained that Deontay Wilder was going to be in no position to land that punch because the power comes from your legs, and Deontay Wilder was shot. He had no energy left, he was tired, he was out on his feet for the last couple of rounds in that contest, so he's seen no way for Wilder to come back, because even though he was still throwing that right hand in patches, it just was never going to land, and even if it did, there was nothing on it because he was gone, he was done. And obviously then came the speculation about the muscle relaxant put in his water by Mark Breland himself. But those are just excuses. There were many of them. I don't believe that Deontay Wilder truly believes them. If he does, then he is severely deluded. There is no way that every single one of these accusations he's made is actually true. I mean, it's okay to latch onto one of them and believe that that might have been the reason, but to latch onto all of them just makes him seem like a child who just won't accept the truth, which is Tyson Fury was the better man. If he accepts that and moves on, he can get better, but if he doesn't, then he will be forever trapped in that cycle of believing the right hand will always land. He doesn't need to learn how to box, he doesn't need to learn how to throw a jab properly, move his feet, or anything like that. He just needs to stay in there, play possum, until the right hand comes, and he can land it and get the knockout victory. But the one thing he needs to realise is, at this level, at elite level, or even at world level, that doesn't work. It worked against Luis Ortiz, but we have to question what kind of opponent was Luis Ortiz. Who had he beat that proved he was at that level? I do believe that Luis Ortiz was a good fighter, but I definitely don't believe he proved it. He proved, of course, that he was an adequate boxer who could stick in around the level of Deontay Wilder in that fight with Wilder, because he was outboxing him for 7 rounds in the second fight, and mostly had the better of Deontay Wilder in the first one, apart from the knockdowns, of course. There were moments for Deontay Wilder, but most of the time, again, he was just playing possum until that right hander came. So we can't really judge Luis Ortiz until we have seen him in there with the likes of Povetkin. And how much has Luis Ortiz got left now after those 2 defeats to Deontay Wilder, because they were both knockout defeats and he's not the youngest guy in the heavyweight division, so perhaps we will never know truly how good Luis Ortiz was, because we will never see him at his best in there with those kind of opponents. But we can give him that one, we can say that, okay, that was a good victory, but again, the same thing applied. He stayed in there for as long as he could, until the right hand landed. That seems to be what Deontay Wilder does. So what Tyson Fury done was, again, go for the knockout and knock him out before Deontay Wilder knocks Tyson Fury out. That was the whole game plan. Anthony Joshua even said he would do the same, that eventually, yes, Deontay Wilder will get you, but the game plan would be to get Wilder before he gets him. That is the best thing to do in there with this kind of opponent, because you can outbox him, but eventually the right hand will land. And give it to Deontay Wilder, he's got an incredible right hand, and there's an immense amount of power in it, but he has to land it for it to cause any kind of effect. If he gets stopped before he can, then he's undone. That's it. He cannot beat his opponent. And the thing is with Wilder, is he waits almost for his opponent to get tired, for them to have a momentary lapse in concentration, because it is a 12-round fight, 36 minutes to stay concentrated in there with a heavy puncher, and all it takes is just one big shot. So they get tired, perhaps a little bit of fatigue, and lose concentration. That is when he pounces. And take nothing away from him, he knows how to land that punch, he has the power there, and he also knows how to set it up and find his way back into the fight, because it's not always easy to lose probably 10 rounds or even 12 rounds at sometimes of a fight, then still stick in there trying to win. So he does know it comes at some point, and he has the mental ability to continue in the fight, just to keep trying that thing again and again until it lands. But the thing is when he's in there with someone like Tyson Fury, or if he would have fought Anthony Joshua, or if he fights them in the future, Andy Ruiz, is those are fighters who can adjust. Those are fighters who will put it on him and get to him before he gets to them. I mean, can you imagine Deontay Wilder fighting Andy Ruiz Jr.? The pressure that Andy Ruiz would bring. He wouldn't be scared to engage with Deontay Wilder. He would be right there in front of him, because that is what Andy Ruiz Jr. does. He's not someone who's going to box him off the back foot and go for a safety first kind of approach in there with Wilder. Yes, he does punch extremely hard, and he would have to be careful, but he's not going to go in there and look to stand off Deontay Wilder. He's going to engage and look to go down to the body and work on the inside. The problem is, how does Deontay Wilder deal with that kind of heat? How does he deal with that style? He could not hack it in there with Tyson Fury, whereas Tyson Fury wasn't really accustomed to fighting that way. That wasn't his number one. Tyson Fury's number one is a pure boxer, albeit unconventional and unpredictable, but still, that is what Tyson Fury has spent his career doing. This time, he was going on the front foot and executing a different game plan with different abilities that he would need to call upon in that fight. Imagine someone like Andy Ruiz, whose number one is to go after his opponent, whose number one is to get on the inside, work down to the body, make it rough and tough. That is what Ruiz would do with Wilder, and I don't see how Wilder could deal with that, trying to stay in there, waiting for the right hand to land. Yes, he can try and box, but at this point his boxing ability is limited, and the things that he can learn is also limited. I believe he can get better, but he needs to recognise that that needs to happen first. Considering all of the conspiracy theories that he's latched onto about Tyson Fury, that makes you wonder, does he even believe that Tyson Fury was the better man? Does he even believe that he needs to improve? That could be the big problem for Wilder going forwards. So in there with Ruiz, he would struggle. In there with even Joseph Parker, he would struggle, because they have different things they can use. And I believe that Parker could beat Wilder, but he would have to be a lot more rugged, and he'd have to show that dog in him to get the victory. He couldn't just outbox him, because Joseph Parker does need to do that a lot more, is show that aspect of his game, to get on the inside, to get close and work up close, because he has a great chin, reasonable amount of power, but good speed and movement as well. So if he does stand there in the pocket and uses his footwork, his angles, double up behind that jab, then Joseph Parker can be a real force in the heavyweight division against the likes of Deontay Wilder, even the likes of Alexander Usyk. Maybe get a rematch with AJ and fight Tyson Fury one day. Those fights are in front of Joseph Parker. Just again, he's on the other side. He boxes too much sometimes when he does need to engage. That happened with him in the Dillian Whyte fight. Dillian Whyte made it a rough and tough fight. Whyte lost the opening round, but did not allow the fight to get away from him. So he made it rough. He made it almost like a street fight in there for Joseph Parker. And Parker could not stick with him on that, because he didn't want to fight that kind of way. He was able to if he really needed to, but he didn't show it until later on in the contest. So those are things that Parker needs to work on, but he does recognise that he needs to work on those things, whereas Wilder doesn't seem to. And the worrying thing for Deontay Wilder is a year has gone by, nothing really has changed. It was a year since he fought, and it doesn't seem likely for him to get back in the ring anytime soon, considering he's pricing himself out of a fight with Charles Martin. So perhaps that fight won't happen, and he won't get back in the ring. He might stay inactive for a year, hoping to get a big payday, when he doesn't really warrant it unless he's in a big fight, and he cannot get a big fight until he has that middle fight to get to that point. So it's kind of like a vicious circle where he doesn't fight because he doesn't get the money he expects, but they're not willing to pay him because he's not in a big fight. So again, vicious circle. Wilder will stay inactive until he decides that, okay, I just need to get back in the ring. Like Andy Ruiz, he just needs to get back in the ring, so that is what he is going to do. Wilder needs to do the same. Now, talking of heavyweight matchups, we are going to get some great ones in 2021. Obviously, Undisputed is one that we will have our eyes on, but there is also Alexander Povetkin versus Dillian Whyte, the rematch, which will happen in Gibraltar on March 27th, moved from March 6th due to Dillian Whyte having difficulties getting back into the country and things like that. There have been a few niggles, so it will be taken somewhere else, which is great, I guess, because the fight just happened, so that is the main thing. So we have that one. Then there is Joe Joyce versus Alexander Usyk, which will happen in April and go to purse bids. So Eddie Hearn has explained he's going to bid for the fight and try and get it, and he did also explain previously that there is a big fight card planned in April that he is looking to put on. I believe that that could be the one. If he is able to win the purse bids, then I believe that that could be that big April card that he is looking to put on. But BT Sports will also want that fight. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.